You're far too kind. Thank you. And hello, folks. Are you well?
Yes.
You look a smashing audience. We've got a great show here. You look my kind of people. Drunks. And we've got a great show. We're going to do all kinds of bits and bobs for you. We're going to do some singing. I'm going to sing a bit later on. That was just a little song called Let's Look at Life. Kind of basically to describe my act. Because if you've ever seen me on stage, you know that's what I do. I just talk about ordinary people. You know, like the fellow went to Liverpool Echo. He said, I want to put an advert in. Bloke said, yes. He said, how much do you charge for an advert? He said, it's £10 an inch. He said, that's too dear, that. He said, why, what are you advertising? He said, a 40-foot ladder. So, there'll be lots of that. And the nicest thing about it, of course, is the show is coming to you straight from Merseyside, the heart and the home of the finest humour in the world. Isn't that right?
Yes.
I was doing a show, it was one of these promotions, you know, for the tourist board of Merseyside, and they said, will you come along and talk to all these business people and what have you, who were coming into the town and put the word out. And we were doing a show in a hotel not a million miles from here, and I was talking about all the funny things I'd seen in the clubs. In fact, I might tell you some of them later, but I was talking to this bloke. He said, you know the latest one that's happened here? I said, no. He said, you know the Adelphi Hotel? I said, yeah. He said, they've got a 20-foot chandelier in the ballroom. I said, yeah. He said, 2 fellas pinched it. I said, what? He said, no, they actually come along and they said, we've come to clean the chandelier, you know. And instead of people saying, well, are you going to climb up and brush it? They said, we have to get it down. So, 4 porters helped them down with this chandelier, see? And they took it away on the back of a wagon, this 20-foot chandelier. And I said, well, somewhere in a little council house in Cantrell Farm, there's this great big chandelier. And when somebody presses a switch, the whole street goes dim. You can imagine. I mean, where else in the world could you find people like that? We're brilliant, aren't we, around here? I mean, it's true. During the course of the next, 60 minutes, I'll try and explain to anyone who's not from Merseyside just how wonderful you and I are. And I'll do it gradual. I'll start with the ladies. I mean, where else in the world could you find ladies like the ladies of Merseyside? Aren't they wonderful? All the fellas, isn't it true? Yeah. We've got the world's most wonderful women. They've got this great way of looking at life. They're always positive, aren't they? Girls round here. Like the lady who said, me real shoe size is 4. But I'm wearing 7s 'cause 4's 8. Incredible. And, of course, this isn't a modern thing. This has been going on for years. I mean, if you go back in history, some of the greatest people in the history of the world, never mind the history of Britain, some of the greatest people in history came from Merseyside. You know this. Moses. Moses had to be a Scouser. Who else but a Scouser could come off that mountain and say to the Israelites, well, I've got him down to 10. True. But I was very lucky. I've met people like that. I've worked with people, and some of the funniest ones in my life have been other entertainers. Because I mean, I'm very lucky to come from round here and get a break on the stage. And I'm always amazed when you see brand new and all kinds of different comedians on Merseyside. And if you think about it, all the comics who've made a name from this area, they're all different. There aren't two the same. You wouldn't say, oh, well, they're running them off now on a jig and they're all totally the same. And I mean, count all the fellas who've made it, your Tarbucks and your Arthur Askeys and your Ted Rays and people like that. There's at least 1 and probably 2 or 3 more, each of those, somewhere in Liverpool. I mean, one of my favourite comics of all time, he's still working, is a bloke called Jackie Hamilton. And anyone who's seen Jackie, or anyone who's listening now who knows him, he's the funniest guy you've ever seen. And I heard a legendary story. This could only happen to Jackie Hamilton. They were filming a couple of episodes of Tenko near Southport, you see. Now, you remember Tenko, the series, a Japanese prisoner of war? And they're looking for extras because it's too expensive to bring them up from London. So they rang up a local agent and they said, is there anyone in the union who can play an extra in Tenko? And Jackie's quite bonny, you know. He must be getting onto like the 16 and 17 stone mark now. He's built like a pear. And Jackie turns up, you know, 17 stone, to be a Japanese prisoner of war. And they've got him behind the wire, you know. He's got the shorts on, like the black pumps and the big stomach. White as a sheet, middle of the jungle. And the director come up and he said, you! He said, what? He said, you can't be a prisoner of war, that shape. And Jackie said, I was only captured yesterday. That's got to be true, hasn't it? It's got to be true. And basically, as I say, the first song I did, the kind of opening number there, is a little thing called Let's Look at Life. And that's what I'm going to try and do with you now. I'm trying to look at life the way other people possibly see us in Britain, because we are the strangest race of people. Have you ever noticed how strange we must be? to people like from Italy or Spain or Americans who can understand English. We are the oddest race of people. The funny things we say. Have you ever listened to the things we say? We say things that don't actually make sense except to us. I was behind two little old ladies once in a supermarket, and one said, "There's a fella by you just won £500,000 on the pools." And the other one said, "He'll have no luck." And you see, in Britain, we don't care what we say or who we say it to. I mean, I was in a summer season in Blackpool, this is true, about 2 or 3 summers ago, and you know when you're in a place for 20 weeks, you're going to either stay in a hotel and pay an arm and a leg, or rent a house, and Pat and I had rented this house, and of course you've got to do your own shopping, you know. And I'm in one of these little corner, you know, these mini kind of supermarket places with 2 aisles, you know, and the one fella serving, and I've got the wobbly trolley, you know, and I'm going up the aisle sideways, and there's a little old lady, with a string bag, you know, with a potato in it or something. They always have like odd things like that, don't they? Or half a packet of biscuits, and she's following me up the aisle, see, and she buttons me by the sugar, and she said, "Excuse me, it is you, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "When are you coming back to finish the bathroom?" It's brilliant. It's brilliant, isn't it? But that's why we're special, you see. We have gifts in Britain that nobody else can copy, and that's true, isn't it? I mean, look at the thing. We're quick. That's the one thing that Americans particularly don't realise. We are so quick in Britain, we can cut your throat and you don't know till you nod your head. And it's right, isn't it? It's like the fellow went into the do-it-yourself store. He said, "I want a sheet of glass." The bloke said, "What size?" He said, "Well, it's twice the length of my arm by twice the length of my right boot." The bloke said, "You haven't got a tape measure." He said, "No, I'm telling you what I want, mate." He said, "I want twice the length of this arm by twice the length of this boot." He said, "Put your arm on the counter, we'll try and measure it." So he measured it up, he doubled it. He said, "I'll put your boot on the counter." And he measured that, he doubled it up. He said, "Right, here's your glass, £5. But a tenner says it won't fit." The bloke said, "It will, I haven't made the frame yet." You can't beat it. We are the sharpest race of people. Not just the men, of course, the ladies as well. And ladies are double clever, aren't they? Maybe it's because of the way us fellas behave, but you ladies have got to be double clever. I'll give you an example of that. It's the bloke who came in late from the pub Sunday night, and I don't agree with that. Do you fellas? I don't agree with blokes coming home late. I think it's awful. Because you come home late from pubs, you've only got to be 20 minutes late, you're in big trouble. Do you ever come home Sunday lunch 20 minutes late? Eh? "Sorry I'm late, love. Is my dinner still warm?" "Should be, it's in the cat." But it's... So this fella's come in really late Sunday night, and he's had a skinful, and he's lying in bed, and all night he's talking in his sleep. "Ramona! Ramona! Ramona!" 8 o'clock in the morning, his wife shook him. She said, "Hey, you, wake up. Who's this Ramona you were talking about all night in your sleep?" He said, oh, God, Ramona." He said, "Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that." He said, it's a horse." He said, "The fella's given me a tip in the 3 o'clock at Newmarket this afternoon, Ramona." He said, 4 to 1 on, get your money on it. He goes off to work, comes in at 5 o'clock. All his cases are packed in the lobby. He said, "What's going on?" She said, "The horse rang." Because the girls are clever, eh? Where in the world could you find girls like ours, eh? Liverpool girls, for me anyway, maybe I'm a little bit biased, but Liverpool girls are double sharp, aren't they? It's the Liverpool lady who said to her mate, "I'm going down to London to do a bit of Christmas shopping." Her mate said, "Well, listen, you be careful down there, because once they realise you're from up the north, they think you're a bit thick, So you watch it, because all these shops down there, they double the price when they realise you're a northerner. So you must haggle. They'll always double the price at least, so you haggle with them." So she goes into Harrods. Haggling Harrods. And she went up to this dress counter. She said, "You see that blue dress? I'd like that, please. Size 12. Fella said, "It's £80. She said, "I know what you like in London. You're all sharks. I've been warned about you lot. You always double everything. I'll give you 40. He said, "I'm terribly sorry, madam. This isn't the sale. It's £80. That's the... She said, "I know what you like. You're all robbers." He said, "Please, madam, please. All right, don't cause a fuss. I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll give it to you for 40. She said, "I'll give you 20. He said, "Madam, I've already half the price." He said, "I know what you're like. I was warned up north just because you've heard my act." He said, "Oh, please, it's not worth..." He said, 20. She said, I'll give you 10. He said, madam, I'm not going to argue anymore. It's ridiculous. I tell you what, have the dress for nothing. She said, in that case, I want 2. You know, the good thing about this kind of show, I'll tell you why I love it. I'm not being a crawler. The good thing about doing this kind of show like this and live audience and people listening at home is there's no commercial breaks. Doesn't that make a change? Yeah. If all this was on telly now, you'd have sat through things. You've heard them. Who writes those commercials, honestly, eh? Mummy, why aren't my hands as soft as yours? Because you're a bricklayer, son. Right? I'm going to ask a serious question of just the folk in front of me, because they're the only ones I can hear answer me now. A serious question amongst ourselves right here. Has anyone here ever honestly sat and watched a commercial on the telly and thought, I'll buy that? Yeah. Now, I tell you why I'm asking you. Don't mention the product now, but no, listen. I tell you why I'm asking you. We've just bought a washing machine. Now, I won't tell you what planet it's from, but it was 387 quid. I couldn't believe the price. 387 English pounds. I mean, we've got it HP. What? £2 down, the rest by court order. But it's been in our kitchen a fortnight, this thing. It is £380 worth of the most advanced microtechnology in history. It is the result of 16 years secret development by the best brains in the business, and the rubbers come off the door. And I thought, now, this is only a washing machine. I mean, this can't hurt me. You look at things on your television that can't... Do you ever watch commercials? Do you ever and analyse what they're trying to tell you? Have you ever watched cruising commercials, you know, for ships? Cruise with us on the sunny Mediterranean. They always show you ships floating on glass. They never show you the up and down ones, do they? Have you ever been on an up and down one, have you? Hey? Bay of Biscay, force 10, hey? And it's bad enough being on the ship. You want to be on the stage trying to make them laugh in a up and down it. The first time I worked in a storm, I was so ill. I'm on the stage. I've got a room full of Martians going green. I was so... I've never done it before or since, honest to God. I said, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot... And I've gone. And I'm legging it for my cabin. Now, I didn't know this, but you know when you're sick on a ship, they hide your cabin. Now, I didn't know that. And I'm bombing down this corridor. And a lady stepped out, not a stitch on. She thought she was going to the bathroom. She's opened the wrong door. She's out in the passageway. She said, I'm terribly embarrassed. I said, don't worry, love, I'm not going to live long enough to tell anybody. I couldn't believe it. But that's ordinary folk. That's what we're all about, isn't it? Isn't it good? Isn't it good to be us? It really is. I love it. I love it. And I love coming home. I'll tell you why. I mean, I've got a smashing family. I'll tell you more about my family later, and maybe a little bit about my upbringing and the places I came from. Anyone here come from where I come from? Bootle? Anybody? Oh, 3. Enough for a fight. Right, now. Before I go on, I didn't teach you, did I? No, thank God for that. Right. Oh, don't say I'm too young. No, no, but I mean, I love going on. My brother's a wonderful bloke. I mean, he was going to come tonight, but he's had a bit of bother. He's a smashing fella. My brother's one of these people who sits and reasons things out. You know what I mean? You ever get people like that? He was watching the Tour de France, you know, the cycle race on television. And he's been watching it for like half an hour, and he suddenly said, why do these people do it? I said, what? He said, why do they do that? Day after day, cycling like that, hundreds of miles, up hills, mountains, down hills, freezing cold, sweating. He said, why do they do it? I said, because the winner gets £500,000. He said, but why do the others do it? He's a smashing bloke, my brother. He's had his troubles. He's not been well for a long time. Man, he's thin, you see. God, when he was a kid, he was thin. Oh, I tell you how thin he was. He won a race. He couldn't break the tape. It cut his neck. Tried to hang himself. My mother had to swing on his feet. Jumped in the baths and the fella said, who threw them braces in the water? What an unlucky man. Do you know he backed a horse called MFI, and 2 lengths from home, a leg fell off. Have you noticed that, I hate to go back in time and say the good old times were best, but have you noticed how modern times are driving people to do peculiar things? It's true, that, isn't it? I think science has probably dictated the way we run our lives now. Science has given us things. I suppose they're useful, but I don't know whether we need them. Like it gave us computers. I mean, do you know that British Telecom have got a brilliant computer? In 1.3 seconds, it can add up everybody's phone bill and send it to me. And it wasn't like that years ago. Do you remember years ago? Not a million years ago, but do you remember the good old days when you and I were a bit younger? Do you remember those days? Do you remember when people in Britain used to be happy, hey? We were poor, but we were happy, weren't we? My grandmother used to say, those were the days. You could make a meal out of nothing if you had the stuff. You knew what she meant, because in those days, there was no such thing as inflation. I mean, if you open any paper to do with anything to do with elections or governments or anything like that, the main problem in Britain today is inflation. 5%, 6%. I can remember when we never had inflation, can you? Can you remember when a pound always bought the same things? Do you remember when you always got 2 or 3 or 4 pints of beer for a pound, or so many cigarettes? I'll tell you when it was, when we had real money. Remember real money? Half crowns and tanners and threepenny bits. We knew what we were doing then. You see, when the rest of the world couldn't understand our money, we used to be rich. It's true, isn't it? I don't know why we went decimal, do you? Any fool can count to 100. It's 240 that used to snooker the Yanks. True. We used to get the American sailors coming off the ships in Liverpool, eh? How much is that? A shilling. They get a handful of 10 bob notes out, you say 5 of them. They didn't know. They didn't know. But you look at prices now. Have you had an estimate recently on a bag of chips? 40p, and that's minimum. 40p? That's 8 bob in real money. God blimey, when we were kids, you couldn't carry 8 bobs worth of chips. Never mind eat them. You bought 8 bobs worth all at once, the fella closed the shop. The police come round to check your gas meter. Do you remember? Different days. When a dollar was a dollar, eh? The good old... When chippies were chippies. They're not chippies now, are they? All going Chinese. I mean, I don't want to cause a panic. I love them. But if the Chinese put something in the curry on a Saturday night, they could take over Britain on a Sunday, do you know? And I mean, the stuff they sell, you don't know what you're buying. Yung Fung Nung and a Ning Nang Nu. And they don't know. They put numbers by them. But they are funny, aren't they? Do you do takeaways? Yes, 4 from 6 leaves too. I love them. But you can go in a Chinese chip shop any day or any night, and there'll be 18 people behind that counter who can speak English, and you never get one. They're making the chips. You always get the man who only knows half the words. You've had him, haven't you? And you say, fish and chips. And he says, fit, aren't you? You want our fit, aren't you? You daren't ask for peas. And you see... It wasn't like that years ago when we had real money. You see, you've even got to change jokes now. You've got to adapt jokes and remember what the price of things is. I mean, year by year now. But I heard a story, this was a long time ago, I was working the clubs around Liverpool and the pubs and what have you, and a fella came up and he said, I've just come from Australia. He said, I've got a brand new joke, it's never been heard in Britain, you can have it. I said, thanks, and I was the first one in Britain who ever got this joke. Now, I've had to change it, obviously, I've had to update it because we've changed money and everything, but it's that lovely story of the fella who goes into the pub and he buys a pint and he's standing at the end of the bar and the barman said, you're not joining the raffle? He said, what raffle? He said, well, you see that big bottle at the end, he said, full of 20 pence pieces? He said, if you can guess how many's in there, you keep the bottle. So he said, right, 4,600. Puts his name on a piece of paper, puts a pound in the kitty, and he carries on drinking. About 10 to 11, the barman says, who's got 4600? He said, what? He said, who's got 4600? He said, I have. He said, you've won. He said, what? He said, we've counted them. There's 4,600 20 pence pieces in this jar. You've won. He thought, what? Can't believe it. Drinks all round for the boys, couple of large scotch, and he's staggering home with this jar full of 20 pence pieces. And as he's coming home, it's snowing. Fairly heavy. And he gets to the front step and he slips in the snow. Jar goes up in the air, down on the floor, smash, coins everywhere. He thought, well, golly heck. How very unfortunate. He thought, I'll leave them here till morning and pick them up then. So at 7 in the morning, his wife shakes him. She says, hey, the snow's cleared and guess what's on the step? He said, I know. 4,600 20 pence pieces. She said, no, 2,300 bottles of milk. We're going to do... We're going to do a song. One of the nicest songs I ever sang about the good old days. We did a television series, and this was written by a young fellow who's a fine writer of fine songs, and I thought it summed up the days when real money was real money. So we're going to close this little part, anyway, with a song that goes something like this.